What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, and we got a lot of things that we got to catch up on because I've been MIA for the last couple of days. I went live for the first time in like a week, Tuesday. So I never really got the opportunity to give you guys my thoughts on the Kalen DeBoer and Jedd Fisch hire. So we're going to discuss that on today's episode. We're also going to get into the backlash that both Jedd Fisch and Kalen DeBoer are facing for leaving their former programs. I'm going to be giving you guys my NFL head coaching hire predictions for what head coach I'm going to be giving you guys my predictions on where I think these top head coaching candidates are going to land, what teams that have head coach vacancies, who they're going to end up hiring. The Cowboys kept big Mike McCarthy. He's back for another season. Got some thoughts on that for sure. We're going to touch on Jerod Mayo and Mike Tomlin saying that Kenny Pickett is going to be the guy for 2024. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Remember that we aren't just the YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You guys see it on the lower third down there, the JT Sports Podcast. And you can find us on every podcasting platform, Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast in audio format. Leave us with a 5-star review. Share the pod with your friends, family members, and acquaintances if you enjoy. And let's talk some football, man. So, of course, the first thing that we're going to get into is Kalen DeBoer is now the new head coach at Alabama. And there's a lot of pressure on him because he's replacing the GOAT. That is Nick Saban. And when he got hired by Alabama, I thought that everybody and their mom was going to be on board with this hire. But there's a lot of mixed feelings about Kalen DeBoer and how this thing is going to turn out at Alabama. You got one half of the people out there that feel like he's going to be a really great coach because this dude is a prodigy. All right, if you were looking for a great replacement for Nick Saban, this dude was it. And I always felt like Kalen DeBoer should have been their first phone call, regardless of if Mike Norvell or anybody else wanted to take this job. I would take Kalen DeBoer over Mike Norvell and Steve Sarkisian and Dan Lanning. He only lost 2 games in the 2 years that he was at Washington. And before he got there, that was a program that got ran down the drain by Jimmy Lake, who was supposed to be able to keep that program afloat once their previous head coach before him, who did a really good job with that, Chris Peterson, I believe his name was. But instead, he ran it down to the ground. He was fighting with players on the sidelines. And then Kalen DeBoer comes in one season, cleans it up. And then the next season after that, year or two, takes him to the national championship game. Not only did he win at Washington, but Kalen DeBoer also won at Fresno State. He also won 3 NAIA championships. And there are a lot of players that played for Kalen DeBoer when he was coaching NAIA that swear that this dude is a phenomenal football coach. Like, this dude is a prodigy. He didn't win Coach of the Year for no reason. There's a method to his coaching that just turns into wins everywhere he goes. And yeah, he is a West Coast guy. He doesn't have a lot of connections and familiarity with the southern part of the country, but who cares? You feel me? Like, Urban Meyer didn't really have a lot of ties to Florida when he took the job, and he did pretty well recruiting. Y'all said that Brian Kelly wasn't a good culture fit for LSU because he wasn't going to know how to recruit the South. Like, when you're coaching at a school like Alabama, you don't need to be a top-notch recruiter to be able to recruit at a top 5, top 10 level when you got access to hella money and access to hella resources. And if you do what you're supposed to do, handle your business on the field and win games, and you're a good coach, players are going to want to play for you. Not every single player is chasing the money. Believe it or not, it may sound crazy to believe, but there are players that actually want to win that commit to a school because of the coach. Now, Alabama has dealt with a mass amount of transfer portal exits, including losing their starting safety, who is the number 1 player in the transfer portal right now. But I don't really think that's a big deal when Alabama still has majority of their roster intact. All right, yes, guys are going to transfer, but there are also guys who are going to transfer from Washington to come to Alabama. And when Kalen DeBoer first got to Washington, it's not like they had a top 5, top 10 roster. What makes Kalen DeBoer a great coach is that he can win at a high level without needing to have a lot of blue chip talent. That Michigan-Washington national championship game that we just saw actually made a little bit of history, because prior to that national championship, there hasn't been a single natty winner that ranked outside of 247 Sports team talent composite rankings, which pretty much takes the amount of every team's 5, 4, and 3 stars and ranks them in order from most talented to least talented based on who has the most blue chippers. Washington wasn't nowhere close to the top 10 or the top 15. The reason why they were able to win was because Kalen DeBoer got a dude in Michael Penix from the transfer portal, got a couple of other good transfer portal pickups, plus was able to do a very good job at developing the players that he got through recruiting or via the portal. That's the sign of a great coach. A head coach that can do more with less is an elite head coach. And that's what Kalen DeBoer has done everywhere he's been. And with his resume, I honestly felt like he was the only dude who was right to replace a guy like Nick Saban. We know Nick Saban is the GOAT. And is Kalen DeBoer ever going to be able to live up to the billing of Nick Saban at Alabama? Probably not. Who is? He's regarded as the greatest college football head coach for a reason. They're probably going to make a statue of Nick Saban. So if you're expecting Kalen DeBoer to be Nick Saban, then your expectations are unrealistic. There's only one Nick Saban. We're never going to get another. But what you are getting is a head coach that is going to be able to keep the Alabama football dynasty intact for the foreseeable future. Now, could 2024, year 1 under Kalen DeBoer, be a little bit of a rough year for you? Potentially. But I definitely believe that in the long term of things, he's going to be running circles around the SEC outside of Georgia and maybe Texas. You look at the other programs in this conference, like, yeah, you got Lane Kiffin, you got Brian Kelly at LSU, you got Josh Heupel at Tennessee, but I wouldn't take neither of those guys over Kalen DeBoer. If you were to ask me to rank my top 5 coaches in the game right now in college football, Kalen DeBoer would be in my top 5. This dude is a fantastic football coach. Like, choosing Mike Norvell over Kalen DeBoer would have been a mistake in my opinion. This was the right dude for the job. He's a prodigy. You don't find a coach as good as Kalen DeBoer just growing on trees every day, which is why it was only fitting for him to get this Alabama job. The thing about him not really being a good culture fit is all bullshit. Like, who cares about culture, man? If you're a good head coach, you create the culture. All right, whatever Kalen DeBoer wants the culture at Alabama to be, it's his job as a head coach to be able to implement that. It's your job as a head coach to be able to sustain a winning formula. Like, yes, Alabama is a really stressful job because you're replacing Nick Saban. And of course, the expectations are going to be rocket high for you. But it doesn't mean that you're not, that high expectations is going to make you crumble and fall. You feel me? Like, Kalen DeBoer has had high expectations everywhere that he's been. Just hasn't been to the level of Alabama, which is to compete for a natty every single season. But this dude has delivered, probably over-delivered, the last 3 spots he was coaching at. Coaching at NAIA, won 3 championships at that level. All right? Coaching 2 years at Washington, only lost 2 games. Beat Oregon several times when Oregon was favored over them. So, Fresno State, like his final season at Fresno State, won, 9 games? Only 3 losses? This dude is a winner. It doesn't matter about him not having as much skin in the game as maybe a Kirby Smart or a Lane Kiffin. And it doesn't matter that he's from the West Coast. People think that just because you come from one side of the country, that means that you're not going to be able to sustain just because you make a location switch. A good coach is a good coach no matter where you're at. Jim Harbaugh won at Stanford. He won with the 49ers. He won at Michigan. He is a great coach. If you're a good coach, your method of winning goes along with you anywhere you go. You should be able to build a winning culture anywhere. And Alabama's already built. All he has to do is be able to sustain the dynasty, and I believe that he can. Is Alabama going to be winning championships every single season under him? Probably not. But I definitely believe he's going to get him 2 or 3. You can win at Washington, who has less resources than Alabama, then you can win at a school like Bama. All right, and it's not like Washington was a bad job. Like, people are now looking at Washington as a stepping stone program. I don't believe Washington is a stepping stone program. That is a tier 2 program that has definitely the capability of becoming a top tier 1 program if they could find the coach like a Chris Peterson that's willing to stay there for a long period of time and wants to really see that program become a national powerhouse. Kalen DeBoer, he knew that with all of his veteran players leaving for the draft or hitting the portal, it was only fitting for him to go to a school like Bama that has the resources and the infrastructure for him to be able to compete every single season. All he has done by making this jump from Washington to Alabama is make things a little bit easier for him. The pressure is going to be huge, you feel me? But even if you do have one down season, I'm pretty sure nobody's going to fire you after that. All right, Kalen DeBoer probably has at least 2-3 years to prove himself at Alabama, but I don't really think it's going to take too long for him to establish himself as the right replacement for Nick Saban. As soon as Nick Saban retired, I said they were going after Kalen DeBoer. Because guess what? If Jim Harbaugh does leave Michigan for the NFL, guess who would have been Michigan's first phone call? Not Sharon Moore or their defensive coordinator. It would have been Kalen DeBoer. This dude is a stud as a head coach. And I don't think enough people that don't keep up with the whole entire geography of college football. Hell, I don't blame you. It's hard for me to do this, and I got to keep up with all the conferences, with all the transfer portal players that end up going elsewhere, all the coaching movement. It's understandable why a lot of people only pay attention to a particular region or conference. But if you watch Kalen DeBoer, you didn't have to watch his whole career. You didn't have to follow this guy from the time he was coaching NAIA. If you watched him at Washington, you would know this dude is a great head coach. This team that Kalen DeBoer had at Washington wasn't the most talented, but yet they were always able to find ways to win games. Because why? They were always ready and well coached and well prepared for the big moments. That's the kind of things that you need to see out of a head coach at Alabama. What has Nick Saban always been known for? Preparation. You give Nick Saban time to prepare, it's a disadvantage for you. Kalen DeBoer, same way. And the good thing about this is that he has his offensive coordinator following him, which his offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubbs, was with him since when he first started coaching NAIA ball. And this also was the same offensive coordinator that Nick Saban brought in for an interview, but didn't hire him because they had differences on the offensive philosophy. So you're going to have a top-notch coaching staff. You're already going to be in a location that's going to make it easy for you to recruit, as long as you're able to hold up your end of the bargain and the results translate on the field and you're winning games. Players are going to want to coach or going to want to play for you. The only concern I have about Kalen DeBoer at Alabama is that, you know, maybe the SEC may just be a little bit too tough for him. Maybe he just happened to luck up and be a big fish in a middling pond, coaching in a Pac-12 conference that has been down for pretty much the majority of this decade. It's funny how when the Pac-12 gets ready to be extinct, it has its best season ever. That's my only concern about Kalen DeBoer. Like, how good as a head coach is he when he's going to be going up against some of college football's best coaches week after week after week? Like, you got to go against Brian Kelly, Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian, Josh Heupel, Lane Kiffin. The list goes on and on and on. When you're coaching in the Pac-12, you don't have that same depth of coaches there. You feel me? Like, yeah, you had your big names there. You had your Dan Lannings and your Lincoln Rileys, but who else after those two guys can you name who was coaching in the Pac-12? Most of you guys don't know who Jonathan Smith was. Former quarterback at Oregon State, is now the head coach at Michigan State. So if you don't really keep up with Kalen DeBoer and what he did at Washington, it's easy to say that this thing isn't going to work. He's a Pac-12 guy. He's not a good culture fit. But if you really look at this dude's resume and you watch his teams play, this dude kind of was the most qualified coach out there, in my opinion, for this Alabama job. There wasn't nobody else that was a better candidate to replace Nick Saban but Kalen DeBoer himself. This dude is a prodigy. When you only lose, 3 games in the span of 2 years at Washington, you're a damn good football coach. And if Alabama didn't hire Kalen DeBoer, Michigan most definitely is, or would, if Jim Harbaugh ends up leaving for the NFL. So the Alabama dynasty, I hate to break it to all of the Alabama haters out there, but they're not going anywhere. If they would have hired any other coach, I would have had a lot of skepticism about how sustainable would the Alabama dynasty be with a guy like Steve Sarkisian or Lane Kiffin. But with Kalen DeBoer, I'm pretty confident, 5 out of 5 confident that the Alabama dynasty is here to stay for at least the next 2-3 decades, as long as Kalen DeBoer wants to keep on coaching. Like, it's crazy how they went from Nick Saban, the GOAT, to Kalen DeBoer, who quickly is becoming a rising star. And this dude's ascension has been really amazing to watch because it's happened so fast. He was the OC at Indiana. He is the head coach at Fresno State. Then all of a sudden, takes the job at Washington, has success right away year 1. Year 2 at Washington takes them to a national championship. When you have a coach who's able to level up this fast, it's a sign that they know what they're doing. You know how many head coaches in this profession have to wait 2-3 decades to get their first opportunity of even damn near being the offensive coordinator? If you move up fast in college football, it's pretty obvious you're a good coach. And I really don't get why people are doubting this hire. And not a lot of people are, but I'll say about 70% of people out there believe this was a great hire. 30% feel like Kalen DeBoer may not work out. Maybe smaller than that. But this was a fantastic hire. To me, he's the second best coach in the SEC right now, going into next season, right behind Kirby Smart. I promise you, if you are somebody who has never really heard about Kalen DeBoer prior to Washington making it to the playoffs, you guys are truly about to find out just how great of a football coach this dude is. And Alabama made their coaching hire really fast. And that goes to show you that they had a list of targets, and Kalen DeBoer, he may not have been their first or second option, but just because he wasn't their first or second phone call doesn't take away from the fact that this dude is a great coach. And it doesn't matter what part of the country he comes from. Like, once again, Urban Meyer went from coaching at Utah with Alex Smith to winning national titles with Tim Tebow. So if you're a good coach, you're a good coach. Your winning ways are going to follow you. You go into a different program just doesn't automatically erase everything that you did in the past. You're just not going to unlearn everything that you learned all the years coming up through the ranks if you're Kalen DeBoer. Is the pressure a lot? Yes, it is. But you know what they say? Pressure either busts pipes or makes diamonds. And Kalen DeBoer, with the pressure that he's going to be under at Alabama, I think he's going to be a diamond. And I don't think that is going to be an issue with him. Washington has been in pressure. They've been in big games with Kalen DeBoer being their head coach. They won a Pac-12 championship despite being a pretty big underdog, in my opinion, against Oregon. They never should have been an underdog against Oregon. They were always a better team than Oregon, in my opinion. Hell, nobody even really gave them too much of a shot of beating Texas. I picked Washington to beat Texas solely based on Kalen DeBoer. That was it. That's what I told all my homies. They was like, bro, how much do you know about Washington, bro? You a Washington Huskies fan? Like, I'm not, but I'm a big fan of Kalen DeBoer. This dude is a phenomenal football coach. And for Alabama to go from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer, I don't think is a bad of a transition to make. If anything, the baton just got handed to Kalen DeBoer from Nick Saban. And Nick Saban is going to be there. Oh, well, Nick Saban is still going to have control over the program. No, he's not. Nick Saban has enough common sense to know that he needs to allow Kalen DeBoer to run the show. All he's going to be there for is maybe to provide a little bit of assistance with how to work recruiting in the area, how to leverage NIL, get the boosters on his side, and he'll have that thing rolling. Honestly, there wasn't a better head coach for this job to replace the GOAT other than Kalen DeBoer. Because if he didn't go to Bama, he was most likely going to Michigan. And I'm pretty confident that Jim Harbaugh is out of there. He was going to be their first phone call. This dude is a top 5 head coach, and I can't wait for this season to start for a lot of people to realize just how truly good this dude is. This dude is a prodigy. And even if Alabama has a down year, I still would believe in him. You feel me? He may not have success right away. It may be a little bit of a transitional period, but mark my word, record this right now. Kalen DeBoer, he's going to win a few natties at Bama. And the rest of the SEC, you better take note of Kalen DeBoer, write his name down, learn how to spell it, learn how to pronounce it, because you're going to be hearing this name a lot. And him going to Alabama was a blessing, because now you give an already good coach a school like Alabama that has tons of money, tons of resources, where now he's going to be able to play around with 5-star, 4-star talent, have a top 5 talented team every single season. This dude's going to win a lot. And Alabama, their dynasty isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Now, before we move on, shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to Trace Mendler, who says, what about his clock management at the end of the Sugar Bowl? I mean, hey, like, every good coach has some blunders. Not everybody coaches a game with no flaws. Like, what about Nick Saban's awful play calling at the end of that Rose Bowl against Michigan? Now, I know he wasn't responsible for calling the plays, but in his interview with the Pat McAfee show, he said that, that last play, when Michigan first called that timeout, the first play that they were going to run, they had 2 different variations of it based on what the defense was going to come out in. Well, after that timeout, they only had 1 variation, and they didn't have any alternatives. And Nick Saban regretted calling that play. Like, everybody makes mistakes. Like, Nick Saban has had some questionable clock management. Like, what about the infamous kick 6? If Nick Saban could have went back and redid that moment, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have kicked the field goal in that spot. I mean, every great head coach has made mistakes. There's not a single head coach that just is perfect every single game that they coach in. If you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. And we got a lot more to talk about, man. I just had to rant about Kalen DeBoer and the people who are doubting him at Alabama, because this dude is going to be a phenomenal football coach. And I'm an East Coast guy. I live in Florida. So you would think that I wouldn't be that in tune to the West Coast side of college football. But I watched a lot of Washington the last 2 years, and I would be really shocked if Kalen DeBoer ends up being a whiff of a hire by Alabama. Like, this dude is a special head coach. I'm trying to tell y'all. With Kalen DeBoer taking the job at Alabama, Washington had to go out and hire Jedd Fisch from Arizona. And when you look at Jedd Fisch, not too many people know about this dude on a national level, but he did fantastic work at Arizona the last 3 years. His first season he got there, that program was in the gutter. Hell, I didn't even know that Arizona even had a football team outside of them having a fantastic basketball program. So when Jedd Fisch first got to Arizona, they don't really win a lot. Year 2, they win 5 games. Year 3, they win 10 games, and they beat Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. And then he goes to Washington, who is a Tier 2 program right now. And most Washington fans don't have a lot of confidence that if this dude has success, he's going to be around for long, because word on the street is he has his eyes set on that Florida Gators job. That's his dream destination, or if he can't get that job, he wants to be coaching in the NFL. But for the time being, enjoy Jedd Fisch where you have him, because this dude is going to have success right out the gate. Now, is Washington going to be playing at the same level under Jedd Fisch that they were under Kalen DeBoer? Probably not. All right? And I probably would say that they probably win 9 games this season. When you look at their schedule, it's not overly tough, but you do have some difficult games here and there. But he's a good recruiter. This dude had a top 25 recruiting class at Arizona, people. So if you can recruit a top 25 class at Arizona, you can recruit anywhere. He also has a lot of ties to the West Coast. He knows how to work recruiting. So I'm pretty sure that recruiting at Washington possibly could be better under Jedd Fisch than it was under Kalen DeBoer. Even though Kalen DeBoer was from that region too, it just seems like Jedd Fisch puts a little bit more emphasis on recruiting and player development as compared to Kalen DeBoer, who assembled his roster through recruiting a little bit, also inheriting some pretty good players, but also getting some major pickups in the transfer portal like Michael Penix. Jedd Fisch is somebody who can develop talent. He's also somebody that can work recruiting, and also does a pretty good job at getting some big fines through the transfer portal. I mean, you got Jedd DeBoer, who was their starting quarterback week 1, and at the end of the season, they had a freshman quarterback who was probably the best true freshman, or I don't know if he was a true freshman or redshirt freshman, but whatever he was, he may have had the greatest freshman season that I've ever seen in all my years watching college football. So, Jedd Fisch, when it comes to recruiting, player development, you're getting a really good coach. When it comes to in-game management, that's where I kind of have a little bit of skepticism about Jedd Fisch being able to keep Washington from falling off a tad bit in the Big Ten. He definitely isn't no Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is a stud head coach. Jedd Fisch, he's a little bit under Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is up here. Jedd Fisch is right here. And Jedd Fisch is still proving himself, which is why this hire is a little bit risky to me. You had to make this hire because he was the best thing available this late into the coaching carousel. You probably weren't going to be able to get any better than Jedd Fisch. But when you are making the transition to a conference like the Big Ten, you got to know that you have an elite head coach. Look at the coaches that are in this conference. Regardless of how you feel about Ryan Day and James Franklin, these are two coaches that consistently have a team that's ranked in the top 10 and has no more than maybe 2 losses at the most, maybe 3. If a 3-loss year is considered a down season for you as a head coach, that means that you're a damn good coach. Jedd Fisch, he had a lot of success at Arizona and a Pac-12 conference that was pretty loaded this year. But when you're going to the Big Ten, you're going to be going up against way more tougher competition on a consistent basis, and your in-game decision-making has to be on point. And I feel like that's a little bit lacking for Jedd Fisch as compared to what you was getting out of Kalen DeBoer. Like, Kalen DeBoer always had his team ready for the big games, especially in the big moments. Jedd Fisch, don't really think you get the same out of him. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to win games. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you're not going to win the big games consistently as what you were with Kalen DeBoer. You probably don't beat Oregon this year with Jedd Fisch. Hell, you might lose to Penn State on the road. Or maybe you lose to Lincoln Riley at home. But I do believe that Jedd Fisch, being a program builder, he's one of those coaches that at a school like Washington, he can keep them around 8-9 wins. Potentially, maybe they get a year when they pop off, they win the conference, they make it to the playoffs, or maybe they make it to the playoffs, not win the conference, just being a at-large bid and getting in that way. But I don't think he's a coach that consistently is going to have you competing for the Big Ten and the national championship year after year after year, like Kalen DeBoer had the possibility of being able to do. But I do think that Washington is still going to be a formidable team in the Big Ten. I can't see them having any less than 9 wins, 8, worst case scenario. Look at their schedule, not that tough. Their first 3 games should be cakewalks. Weber State, Eastern Washington, and Washington State, who is in a really bad situation right now. Jedd Fisch, will he win big at Washington? Not really confident that he will, but I'm confident that he'll keep this program afloat, where they won't reach the level that they did this past season, making it to a natty, but there'll still be a team that will be vying for a top 15 spot. Maybe they get into the 12-team college football a couple of times if he stays long enough for that to happen. But I'll give this hiring a B+. For the moment in time that you have to make this decision, you weren't going to get anybody better. And you got a guy who did a really good job at building up a program that isn't really all that well known for football. If anything, they're well known for being a terrible football team. Not too many people knew how good Arizona actually was until you turned on the Alamo Bowl and you was like, damn, like Arizona, holy crap, they're a good football team now? And then you realize when you get a guy like Jedd Fisch, when he's at a program like Arizona that's not really known for having a lot of success on a gridiron, he's going to get lured away from a bigger program. And you got to be somewhat of a pretty decent coach if a program like Washington wants you to coach their football team, replacing a guy like Kalen DeBoer. So, Jedd Fisch, I think he's a pretty decent coach. I have my concerns about him because he has risen through the ranks a little bit quicker than normal. He still doesn't have like a resume that you can look at and be super confident in as compared to Alabama fans with Kalen DeBoer. But if he was able to turn Arizona into a respectable opponent in the Pac-12 when it was at its best, I'm pretty sure he can keep Washington at a level where they're winning 9, 10, and occasionally 11, 12 games on a good year. But good recruiter, good at player development. He already has a really good coaching staff coming in. He had a really good coaching staff at Arizona, and a lot of those guys are following him. And he recently just hired, not too long ago, the other day I saw the news on my phone that he hired Pete Carroll's son to be his offensive coordinator. And he also has a lot of admiration for Pete Carroll. Like, this dude was so hyped to meet Pete Carroll, bro. Pete Carroll must have been this dude's idol. So who knows? But a lot of Washington fans like the hire, but they don't like the hire because you got a guy who, if he has success, he's not going to be here long. And Washington, to me, isn't a stepping stone program. This is a program that if you get a head coach that actually is committed to staying here and wanting to build something special, you can. I don't think it's extremely hard to recruit at Washington. And remind you, this was the same dude who brought in the 22nd ranked recruiting class back in I believe it was, I'm trying to find it. I believe it was 2022 he brought in the 22nd ranked recruiting class. And one of his recruits already followed them to Washington. And there were like 6-9 players in the span of 30 minutes for Arizona that hit the portal as soon as they were eligible to. And we all know where they're going. So if he gets the majority of his Arizona players on that Washington team this season, I still don't believe they're going to be good enough to win the Big Ten. But they still should be good enough where they could be a 9, 10, maybe 11 win team. But Washington, they're not going to become irrelevant with Jedd Fisch as their head coach. He should be able to keep them afloat. If he ends up not working out, I wouldn't be super surprised. I would be a little bit stunned. But it's like at the same time, he doesn't really have the resume that a guy like Kalen DeBoer has that gives you confidence that, yeah, he is going to win. He is going to win. It's like I have confidence that he's going to win. But on a scale of 1 through 5, I probably got to say 3 out of 5. But if you can win at a school like Arizona, who is like $200 and something million in debt, why can't you win at Washington? Washington has pretty good resources. They are a tier 2 program. Chris Peterson had this team competing at a pretty high level every single season when he was with Washington. So, Jedd Fisch, I think this was a pretty good hire considering the situation that they were in at the time that they had to make this move, and they did it pretty fast. So I like Jedd Fisch at Washington. I'm not expecting them to win championships with him as their head coach, but I do believe he'll keep them around 9, 10, maybe 11 wins. College football fans are some of the biggest hypocrites in the world. It's funny how fans of their favorite teams always get hyped when they get a big-time transfer out of the transfer portal or they hire a big-time head coach from a smaller school. But Arizona fans, they were really irate when Jedd Fisch upped and jumped for Washington after he lied and told on a national show that he was planning on staying with Arizona for the next couple of years. And then, of course, Kalen DeBoer did the same thing with Washington. He said that he was going to be there for a while. He said that he was committed to winning at Washington. And all of a sudden, he leaves for Alabama. And college football fans are saying that this is bad for the sport, that the coaches can just up, jump, and leave at any part of their contract without really paying their dues to the university. And I understand where y'all are coming from. And I do understand y'all frustrations, especially if you are an Arizona fan, because Arizona was completely irrelevant in college football. I didn't even know they really had a college football team. Until, I saw what Jedd Fisch was doing recently at Arizona, and I saw Noah Fafita going crazy. But outside of Jedd Fisch, you have really struggled to find a head coach that's been able to keep Arizona even at a sustainable level where they can be a bowl caliber football team on a consistent basis. So it's understandable why Wildcats Nation is upset about losing Jedd Fisch. Washington fans, though, Kalen DeBoer, may have just made himself one of the most hated former head coaches to ever take his former team to a national championship, because in the span of a couple of days, this dude went from beloved to megally hated after leading the team to the national championship. Like, listen, this is part of life, people. What really shocks me about people who get outraged about coaches leaving and players transferring is that you never get mad when a player leaves a smaller university to play for your university because he sees that as a better opportunity. Same thing with the head coach. But as soon as a head coach wants to leave to put his family in a better financial situation, to make more money, be in a situation that's more sustainable to winning, he's a villain. Same thing with the players. And another thing that really confuses me about how college football fans that are fans of these two teams upset about this hire is that these coaches aren't doing anything that you want to do yourself. Be honest. At your current job, if you had another job that offered you times two the pay, where you were doing the same thing, you mean to tell me that you wouldn't leave neither? You see, when it comes to the whole argument of money versus morality, morality loses the majority of times. This is a money-driven world, people. A lot of decisions that we make are based on money. And another thing is that we live in a selfish society. We live in a selfish world, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has to be a little selfish because they all have to do what's in their best interest. What you do every day, the decisions that you make are for you because you feel those are the best decisions that you can make to put yourself in a position to win. And that's what Kalen DeBoer and Jedd Fisch did. I don't get how you can get mad at a guy for choosing to leave Washington, a really good program, by the way, for a school like Alabama. Like, Alabama has all the resources, all the money in the world for Kalen DeBoer to continue to have success there and do it a lot easier than what he was able to do at Washington. Yeah, it sucks that you lost a great head coach and you may view your program as a stepping stone program, but maybe try to hire a head coach who actually played for the university, has his heart and soul rooted in Washington Huskies football, and you're more likely will find somebody willing to stay. I'm pretty sure Jonathan Smith, who was coaching at Oregon State, also played for that school, never would have left them if they would have remained in the Power 5 conference. You see, when you got a little bit of skin in the game with a certain team, like, for example, when you look at this whole situation with who is a really big alumni, I forgot what it was, but when you look at college football today, the coaches that stayed the longest with said program are coaches that were alumni of that school. For example, Jeff Brom, Louisville. He played quarterback there, had a lot of success at Louisville, right? And when you look at a school like Washington, you know, you're a tier 2 program, but that doesn't mean you don't have the capability of becoming a tier 1 program as long as you can find a head coach that is committed to staying there for a few decades. You feel me? That's what you need to be able to become a powerhouse. Look at Nick Saban. You know, Alabama already was a little bit of a blue blood before he got there, but now he stayed there so long, he built up an infrastructure that made Alabama an elite program. And you look at, you know, Kalen DeBoer and what he did at Washington, they were a good program under him. But the thing is that with Washington, you got to find more head coaches that are more rooted into the program, that have skin in the game, that actually have a unique bond with Washington Huskies football and the fan base. You see, you hire these good coaches, but they don't stay because they only view Washington as a stepping stone. You got to stop hiring coaches that view Washington as a stepping stone and try to find more Chris Petersons. Chris Peterson was doing this thing at Boise State. He went to Washington and continued to have success there. He's probably one of the better head coaches that Washington has had in some time. Jedd Fisch at Arizona, like, it's understandable why he left Arizona. He was never going to stay there. You fans can get all mad at all you want to about, oh, well, he promised he was going to stay. Bro, like, there's people that make promises every day that they can't keep. You've made promises that you can't keep. Well, these parents and these players are extremely upset. You know, I was talking to a player on my football team for the college that I go to, and he said that when these players commit to a university to play football, they're mainly committing for the coaches. Okay? Like, these players don't really care about, the university itself. They only care about, can the coaching develop them, get them to the next level, or are they going to have the opportunity of being able to start right away? Like, you can't get mad when the head coach up jumps and leave for a different program, but then you praise your school for taking the head coach from a smaller program. It's fucked up how college football has just become this manhunt. You feel me? It just seems like everybody's out for themselves. Nobody has loyalty and commitment to the program anymore. But you know how you can change that? How about you hire head coaches that don't view your school as an opportunity to something bigger, but view your school as a program that has the possibility to become great and to become a tier 1 program. The only thing they're missing is the coach. Those are the kind of guys you need to be hiring. Jedd Fisch, it further proves my point. There are many Washington fans and many people out there that believe he's not going to be at Washington too long because he's eyeing that Florida job or he's eyeing a job in the NFL. You see, you need to hire these coaches that have connections to your university, ties to your university. No matter how much success Jeff Brom has at Louisville, he probably would never leave that university because he has skin in the game. He played with that program. He has blood, sweat, and tears left on that field. So, of course, he's never going to leave Louisville anytime soon. He's an alumni there. But for Jedd Fisch, he didn't have any ties to Arizona. That was just an opportunity for him to put himself in a better situation. And he goes to Washington and he's doing the same exact thing. Stop making hires that are all about how good of a coach is and try to find a coach that not only can be a good coach for your program, but also wants to build up your program and leave it in a better state than where he found it. So I really don't understand all the bitterness from these Arizona and Washington fans about losing their head coaches. It's just, that's part of college football nowadays. Everybody's going through the same thing. You see, the only thing is that fans don't like it when their team has a mass exodus of players that enter the transfer portal. But you laugh at schools like Georgia and Texas A&M when it happens to them. Nobody should be feeling bad for what's happened to Alabama. I don't feel bad. I didn't feel bad when they got Jamison Williams or when they got Jermaine Burton or when they got Jahmyr Gibbs. When Jahmyr Gibbs left Georgia Tech, that killed them. It really did. Like, their previous head coach, George Collins, he was doing a pretty good job of building up that program and recruiting. It's just that the results on the field weren't what people were hoping for. And eventually the players just walked out the door and went elsewhere. But if Jahmyr Gibbs would have stayed at Georgia Tech and a couple of their other key pieces, there's no telling how good they could have been if Jeff Collins was actually a good coach. You see, that's just how college football is today. And if you're just one of those people that just say, oh, college football is terrible, I'm tired of watching the sport, okay, stop watching it. You're not hurting nobody. College football is as popular in the year 2024 as it's ever been. It has become the second most popular sport in America. At one point, basketball, the NBA, and MLB were popular than college football. Now the NFL and college football run American sports. And people always ask me, JT, why you always talk about football? You never talk about any other sport. Because there's no need to talk about any other sport. I love college football. I love the NFL. And plus, if I really needed to chase more views and more money, I don't need to go to any other sport to do that when the two most popular ones are the ones I love talking about the most. So there's no need to talk about anything else. It's just, fans just hate losing great coaches and great players. That's understandable. But Arizona fans got little things in their bars now where you can literally piss on Jedd Fisch. Like, come on, man. Like, well, what are we doing here? You're mad at a guy for bettering his situation, doing the same thing that you would have done yourself? I know there's some good-hearted people out there that say, man, if I was Jedd Fisch, I would have wanted to build something special. That's understandable. But the majority of people out there who get on these whole high horses and they always be preaching on social media about loyalty to the program, like, save me the bullshit. Like, really. Like, everybody When a head coach leaves that's really good, leaves a smaller program for a bigger one, they always bring this up how NIL and the transfer portal have changed the sport. This has been happening in college football since the beginning of time. That's just how this thing works. If you are Alabama and you need a great head coach, guess where you're going to get it from? You're going to get a great head coach from a program that people believe to be a little bit under you. That's just how it works in life. In life, your goal should always be to level up. You can't get mad at somebody for bettering their situation. I would never get mad at Jedd Fisch for doing what he felt was in his best interest to provide financial stability for his family and also what he felt was best for his goals and aspirations in his career. Oh, JT, like, you just carrying water for Jedd Fisch and Kalen DeBoer. Like, what about the commitment that he made to the players? You know, it's funny. Last week when I was listening to Nick Saban on the Pat McAfee show, one of Pat McAfee's co-hosts asked him about how does he recruit when he's up there in age? Do players never ask him about how long is he going to be there before he retires? Because you know what Nick Saban always asked him? Are you going to be here all 4 years when I am coaching and I don't retire? And guess what the players say? They don't know. So it's just like there's no loyalty in college football, but there's not a lot of loyalty to a lot of things in life. That's a problem in today's society. We don't have a lot of loyalty. Everybody's looking out for themselves. Everybody's trying to do the best thing to put themselves in the best position to win in life. And that's just what college football is. And it just seems like a lot of college football fans, especially the ones that are fans of Washington and Arizona, are really hurt about losing two pretty good coaches. Kalen DeBoer was a phenomenal head coach. Of course you want to keep him around. I can understand your frustration. I definitely understand your frustration if you're an Arizona fan. But at the same time, how did Arizona replace Jedd Fisch? Oh, they went and they hired a head coach from a smaller program. Imagine how the San Jose State fans feel about losing a pretty good head coach for a bigger program. They probably feel cheated. They probably feel, a little bit sad that now San Jose State may struggle to find a suitable replacement that can keep them at a consistent winning level relative to the expectations that they have. Hell, FAU, if Tom Herman leads FAU to 2 big seasons that end up resulting in FAU potentially making it to the college football playoffs as a G5 auto bid, you think he's going to be coaching at FAU for long? No, he's not. That's just what happens when you are a school that doesn't have the same resources that another program can provide. At the end of the day, Kalen DeBoer winning at Washington would be a lot harder than him winning at Alabama. You know, it also isn't the easiest to recruit at Washington. Now, he could have stepped his game up and gotten better in those areas, but I really don't get why so many college football fans just always want to rant on social media about how there's no loyalty in college football. College football has been this way for a while, before the transfer portal started. Now, I do agree that, they do need to change the timetable for when you're able to leave your school for another program, because I do believe that it's messed up how you can be a head coach who has your team in their conference championship game, win the conference, you don't make the playoffs, but you get a pretty good New Year's Six bowl game, and yet you just decide not to coach in it because you are focused on your other job. So it's tough. College football has definitely changed a lot, but coaches have been doing this since the start of the sport. Well, these coaches should honor their contracts. Well, these players should honor their commitments. They shouldn't be transferring 4 years. They shouldn't be transferring willy-nilly like that. It's funny how everybody was all for player mobility, right? Everybody was always about, man, the players need to get paid. Oh, the players should be able to transfer for whenever they want to. The coaches can do it. Why can't they? But all of a sudden, these players are executing their rights that everybody wanted them to have, and now everybody's upset about the repercussions. That's crazy. Nobody ever thinks about the repercussions. Everybody always thinks about what's best for their team. So it's just like, who truly is selfish? You feel me? Arizona fans and Washington fans are mad at Kalen DeBoer for bettering themselves, getting more money in the process to provide for their families. All because they chose to leave their university. Because they felt like they were indebted to them for some reason. These people don't owe y'all anything. You're fans. You go to the games. You pay money to watch the games. You pay money for merchandising. We get it. You support the team. You matter. But at the end of the day, bro, like, these people are humans. If they don't do anything that you want to do yourself. Most of you guys who get on social media and complain about how there's no loyalty, if you had a job offer to do the same thing that you were doing at your current job for another one with times 2, times 3 to pay, guess what you're doing? You're leaving. F how long you've been with your current job. Like, there's no loyalty when it comes to business. And college football is still a business at the end of the day. So it's just college football fans, to me, just sound like big hypocrites. Because you love when players transfer from smaller schools that are really good to come play for a big-time program, but you get mad when good players want to transfer out of your program to go to a program they feel is better. Same thing with the head coaches. You're a hypocrite. It's just college football is effed up all the way around when it comes to loyalty. But there's not a lot of loyalty when it comes to business and sports. It's a production-based business, and everybody's trying to do what's in their best interest to put themselves in the best position to succeed. And that's why I never get mad at these things. Like, I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan, and we've been down for so many years. But when we got Cam Ward, it felt so good. But imagine how Washington State fans have to feel losing Cameron Ward to the transfer portal due to name, image, and likeness. Going to play for a school like Miami just because they have a bigger bag they can offer him. You know, like, college football isn't in a great place right now when it comes to morality and ethics. But, you know, morality and ethics, when it comes to them versus money wins the majority of the time, people. It's just how the world works. I want to give you guys my predictions for all the NFL head coaching hires. Who's going to become the next head coach of the Carolina Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Chargers? I got you guys. My first prediction for the Carolina Panthers, I got them hiring Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick, he doesn't have a lot of experience as a play caller and as a coach in general. He spent a couple of seasons with the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan, and when D'Amico got the call to be the head coach of the Texans, of course, he followed him there. And for the Carolina Panthers, you need an offensive-minded head coach because you drafted Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick, and it's only right that you do him the favor of getting him an offensive-minded coach that can help elevate his game. Because after what we saw from him in year 1, yeah, the team wasn't good, but he didn't look like the same player that I saw playing at Alabama under Nick Saban. Bobby Slowick is probably the best hire the Carolina Panthers can make when it comes to getting a offensive-minded coach that has potential to be able to turn the franchise around, because with how bad of an owner David Tepper is and him being regarded as the next Dan Snyder, I don't think too many coaches, at least the ones that are being highly touted, are going to want to coach under him. Bobby Slowick, with him being inexperienced, he probably is going to get passed over for a lot of head coaching opportunities. And if he really wants to become a head coach, doesn't want to wait another season for a better opportunity, I definitely could see him taking this Carolina Panthers job. So I believe Bobby Slowick is going to be the next head coach of the Carolina Panthers. That's my prediction. Bill Belichick, I'm really confident that he's going to the Atlanta Falcons. They got a second interview lined up with him this weekend. The first interview they did, like, I believe the dude was on a damn yacht. And Bill Belichick, he came out and there was a report that said that he wants to coach for a team that has a little bit of talent but has underachieved. Well, the Atlanta Falcons definitely underachieved this past season because Atlanta fans were really excited about how good this team had the ability to be with how easy of a schedule they had, not going up against a lot of great quarterbacks, playing in a weak division, and they had a pretty good squad. Outside of the quarterback position and the offensive line being a little bit inconsistent from time to time when it came to pass blocking, Atlanta had a really good defense last season, and they got a really good amount of young, talented pieces to work with on offense if you're Bill Belichick. And when you bring in Josh McDaniels to be your offensive coordinator, all you really got to find is a quarterback and improve the offensive line, which is what Bill Belichick does better than the majority of other coaches in the National Football League. And you know the defense is going to be up to par. The Atlanta Falcons have everything that Bill Belichick needs to be able to get himself back into the playoffs and to kind of change his legacy in a sense, because most of us regard Bill Belichick to be the greatest head coach in NFL history. But when Tom Brady left and won that Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Bill Belichick drafted Mac Jones, we obviously can see that Tom Brady was a little bit more of a factor and had more influence on the Patriots' success than what Bill Belichick did. And for Bill Belichick, he definitely has to be having a little bit of some hard feelings about that, how people are talking about him and his legacy. So, of course, he wants to get back into it and show everybody that he's still a great coach and why he is regarded as arguably the greatest head coach in NFL history. I see him going to the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons owner, he's really committed to winning right now. He wants to win at all costs. He realizes he isn't getting any older. And Bill Belichick is still a damn good coach. All he needs is a quarterback and some pieces on offense. The Atlanta Falcons already have that. All he needs to do is improve the offensive line, draft the right quarterback, or pick up the right quarterback in free agency or trade for one, and the Falcons will be rolling. Mike Vrabel, I see him going to the Washington Commanders. The new GM of the Commanders already has a lot of familiarity with Mike Vrabel when he was working with the Patriots organization back in the early 2000s. Now, ideally, Bobby Slowick probably will make a little bit more sense just because he has more recent familiarity with him. But if you're the Washington Commanders, hiring Bobby Slowick, as intriguing as a hire as it could be, he doesn't have a lot of experience. He's not proven as a head coach at all, or even a coordinator at that. And Mike Vrabel is. So you got a chance to get a proven head coach that is a proven winner that was able to do more or less with the Tennessee Titans the past 2 years. Like, I don't know why the Titans fired him. Like, it definitely had to be a clash between him and the general manager, because no way you thought that the Titans were going to be anywhere close to a playoff team with how bad that roster was. The Washington Commanders are a team that is in a rebuild right now, or they need to be in a little bit of a rebuild. But for a coach like Mike Vrabel, you look at the current state of the NFC East, I mean, the coaches that you're going to be going up against, you're going up against Mike McCarthy, Nick Sirianni, like Brian Dable. Like, you love Mike Vrabel's chances of being able to turn the Commanders into a formidable team right out the gate. We know how good he is on the defense side of football. He's a really good motivator. His hires when it comes to offensive coordinator the last couple of years have been really bad. But Arthur Smith is available. He's probably going to bring him along with them. So the offense should be set. Now, who does he want to be his quarterback? Well, he could either roll with Sam Howell, or they could get rid of Sam Howell, draft a quarterback, because they do got a pretty high pick. So they could either trade up for the one spot to get Caleb Williams, or they could take Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whoever else they feel comfortable picking at their current draft spot with Vrabel as the head coach. And this dude never wanted his best players to be traded. Like, there was a video that went around on Instagram that kind of went a little viral when he was visibly frustrated and had to get up out of his seat on draft night when they traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles a few years back and they drafted Treylon Burks. Like, he had to get up and get a little bit of air, and I don't blame him. The dude wants to win. He isn't somebody that's one of those people that cares about tanking and draft positioning. Like, he wants to win. He wants to compete. And the Washington Commanders, with their new ownership group, they need a good coach and also a good culture builder, because the culture with this team has been really bad the last couple of years. Now, it's not as bad as what it used to be like a decade ago, but under Ron Rivera, there just was a lot of complacency, a lot of mediocrity walking through the locker room. And Mike Vrabel, he's one of those coaches that gets the most out of all his players. His players are never going to quit on him. They got a lot of respect and admiration for him. And he's an alpha. And that's what the Washington Commanders need as a head coach. They need somebody that's proven, somebody that has a track record that you can look at and say, okay, like, this dude has had success in the league. This dude had the 1 seed with the most injuries in the NFL that season. They got the 1 seed. He took the Titans to the AFC Championship game when they upset the Baltimore Ravens. Y'all remember that? This is a really good football coach, and this is what the Washington Commanders need. I also have seen them linked to Ben Johnson, but Mike Vrabel is too good of a head coach for you to pass up on for an unproven commodity. Now, for the Raiders Antonio Pierce, it's only right that you make this dude the interim head coach. If you can't get Jim Harbaugh or Bill Belichick, Antonio Pierce is your next best option. I like Antonio Pierce. He did a really good job improving the Raiders defense when he took over as the interim head coach. He got a big win against the Kansas City Chiefs, albeit it wasn't the most prettiest win. And there were some things that Antonio Pierce could have did a little bit better. Some may argue and say that he should have benched Aiden O'Connell. But it's like the dude did a pretty good job his first couple of weeks on the job with the Las Vegas Raiders. And I'm hoping that he gets it full time, only if they don't get Jim Harbaugh, because Jim Harbaugh is just too good of a head coach that you can't pass on for a guy like Antonio Pierce. He isn't that proven. Jim Harbaugh, his ways of winning translate anywhere he goes. He was winning at Stanford when they were terrible. He was winning this past year at Michigan, winning national championships when they were down for years. And he turned the 49ers into a powerhouse in his first 3 seasons there. He took them to 3 straight NFC championships and 1 Super Bowl appearance. And the only reason he got fired was because he never got along with the ownership. So if you're Mark Davis, if you can't get Jim Harbaugh or Bill Belichick, you get Antonio Pierce. The players like him, already has familiarity with the organization, and the GM who was anointed the interim GM, he's still there as well. So it only makes sense for them to keep Antonio Pierce. He got to get the quarterback right. I hope that he doesn't do a stupid decision and go out and get a guy like a Russell Wilson. Like, get you a young quarterback and get you a good offensive coordinator that can develop him. Coaches like Antonio Pierce end up fumbling away opportunities like this because they fuck up with the quarterback position. Get quarterback right, Antonio Pierce, if you get this job. Like, don't be goofing around with no Aiden O'Connell or signing no Russell Wilson in free agency. Like, if Antonio Pierce gets this job and he hires an offensive coordinator and they go out and they get a Russell Wilson, he's going to get fired pretty fast and he's not going to work out. Like, it doesn't matter if the players like you or not if you're not winning on the field. You got to be able to keep winning for players to continue to like you, because nobody likes playing for a losing head coach. So Antonio Pierce to the Raiders, I believe he's going to end up becoming their full-time head coach. I don't see them getting Jim Harbaugh. I just feel like Jim Harbaugh is so infatuated with this LA Chargers coaching job, and that's where I got him going. Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. Listen, I'm not a LA Chargers fan, but I'm a fan of the NFL, and I want the football gods to finally deliver the Chargers ownership the ability to dish out the amount of money that it takes to get a big-time head coach. And it seems like they took a big amount of offense to people calling them cheap, saying that they don't care too much about winning. They only try to find a good bargain. And it looks like they're going to put all the resources that they have available of being able to land a big-name head coach. They've had a lot of interest in Mike Vrabel, a lot of interest in Bill Belichick, and Jim Harbaugh has been linked to this job even before their season ended. Like, right when they were getting their ass kicked by the Las Vegas Raiders on Thursday night, I was making videos on TikTok and Instagram Reels saying how Jim Harbaugh was going to be looking damn fine in that light blue Chargers attire. And Jim Harbaugh, you give him a quarterback like Justin Herbert, and they do have a little bit of talent on that squad. Now, I do know some of their better players when it comes to Khalil Mack and Mike Williams. You don't really know their future with the organization due to their contract situations. But either way, you give Justin Herbert a head coach like Jim Harbaugh, and I promise you, you're not going to be asking yourself, how is Justin Herbert so good but unable to win playoff games? Because Jim Harbaugh is going to put this dude in a system that's going to just completely elevate him. And you're going to have the best head coach that the Chargers have had since God knows when. I can't remember the last time the Chargers had a somewhat competent head coach that was even in the same realm, the same breathing space as a guy like Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, he's won everywhere he's been. And there's no reason to expect him not to win with the LA Chargers. The Seahawks, I got them hiring Ben Johnson, currently the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. If I'm Ben Johnson, I got my eyes set on 2 jobs that give me the best chance to win right away. And that's the Atlanta Falcons and the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks, they have everything you need to be able to be a championship team right away as long as you know what you're doing. They've done a fantastic job of building this team up through the draft. They got talented wide receivers, DK Metcalf, JSN. Tyler Lockett is starting to fall off a little bit, but you got Noah Fant. You got a really promising young offensive line. Your defense is pretty good. It's talented. It just has underachieved. A guy like Ben Johnson, with how much of a high demand he's in right now, I wouldn't risk taking the opportunity with the team that has to be rebuilt. I'd rather go to a team that's already built, just needs a good coaching, because it's a lot easier to have success right away. Seattle with Ben Johnson, with how good of an offensive mind this dude is, if they get the right QB in there, or if they run it back with Geno Smith, this possibly could be a top 5, top 10 offense with Ben Johnson at the helm. And if he gets the right defensive coordinator, you mean to tell me that you don't think Seattle could be in the conference championship game next year? Like, this team has so much young talent. We look at how young the Packers were, or how young they are right now with their recent win over Dallas in the wild card round. But the Seattle Seahawks, they're pretty young in their own right. And there are a lot of talented young players on that team that have been underutilized, especially offensively. So you get a guy like Ben Johnson in there calling the plays and assembling a pretty good coaching staff that he can do that thing and get the defense right, Seattle could be right back in the Super Bowl conversation. And lastly, the Tennessee Titans, I got them going with Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan. I don't know if they want to go defense, considering the fact that they have Will Levis at QB and they're not going to be in prime position to get any of the top-ranked quarterbacks in this year's draft unless they trade up. But how are they going to trade up when they don't really have a lot of compelling assets to do that? So Will Levis, he's somebody that he showed a little bit of promise, but there's also a lot of reasons to be skeptical about him. He had a good game against the Miami Dolphins when they put off that big upset Monday night, and his debut against the Atlanta Falcons was fucking fantastic. Like, you would have thought that this dude was going to be it at quarterback for Tennessee, but I'm still not sold on him. And the Tennessee Titans, it would be in their best interest to go ahead and get an offensive-minded head coach that can actually give Will Levis a better chance at becoming a competent franchise quarterback for this organization. Brian Callahan, this dude isn't no no-name coordinator. He has been in these head coaching discussions for the last 2 years. He came really close to getting that Arizona Cardinals job, along with his defensive coordinator currently on the staff with him, and Lou Anarumo. And he also interviewed for a couple of other jobs last year as well. He doesn't call plays for the Cincinnati Bengals. He never has, but he's a big part of the game planning, the scouting. Like, he does a lot for Zach Taylor and company down there in Cincy. And for the Tennessee Titans to get him, I feel would be a pretty good hire if they can't get any of the bigger name head coaches out there. Like, they don't have no traction with Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh. And you got rid of Mike Vrabel, who was a defensive-minded coach. And the biggest Achilles heel for Mike Vrabel, although he was a really good head coach, is that he could never get the offense right. Yes, we know that they were depleted on the offense side of football. No offensive line, damn near no receivers, not great quarterback play. So you bring in a guy like Brian Callahan, he can elevate that offense. Tennessee, you need an offensive-minded head coach when you look at the division that you're going to be playing in for the next couple of years. When you got Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen, you got Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence. I believe they can figure it out eventually. And even if they don't figure it out, you still got to worry about D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud. Everybody has a good quarterback. And for you to have a good quarterback, you need an offensive-minded head coach or OC that can put them in a system that can elevate them. And that's what I believe Brian Callahan can do with Will Levis. And he also has familiarity with the Sean McVay coaching tree. He also was working under him, I believe. So when you look at Brian Callahan, he's been with Zach Taylor ever since he first arrived from LA to Cincinnati. And I think if you're Tennessee, this would be probably one of the better hires that you can make, unless you want to go on the defense side of the football and maybe you get a Mike McDonald or somebody like that. But I don't think Dan Quinn would be a good hire. I really believe you need somebody who knows what they're doing on the offense side of the football so you can hopefully have a franchise QB in Will Levis, because once you got quarterback right, a lot of other things become a lot easier to fix, and it becomes a lot easier to win games when you can get consistent high-level quarterback play. Breaking news, people. Kenny Pickett is going to be QB1 for the Steelers in 2024. According to Mike Tomlin, they're going to run it back with Kenny for another year. They're going to go all out on bringing in a new offensive coordinator. And they will bring in some competition for Kenny Pickett. So it's not like he's just going to be handed the keys to the Lamborghini, even though he kind of is. Because let's face it, Mason Rudolph, with him being a pending free agent, Pittsburgh probably isn't going to be willing to pay enough money to keep this guy around. I do expect for Mason Rudolph to sign a pretty hefty salary for him to be a backup quarterback somewhere with how well he played the last final games of the regular season. And he didn't look too bad against the Buffalo Bills, minus that red zone interception. Like, I felt he played pretty solidly. Kenny Pickett is not that good. All right, outside of him having the ability to step up late in games in the fourth quarter or being scrappy, playing through injuries or whatnot, he's not a great quarterback. And Mason Rudolph looked fantastic compared to how Kenny Pickett was looking. Even with, firing Matt Canada, he looked pretty good against Cincinnati, but they only scored 16 points. When Mason Rudolph was in, they were averaging over 20 with ease. So Kenny Pickett, I'm not on board with this dude as the quarterback for Pittsburgh. I really don't think he has it. Even if you do get a new offensive coordinator, who really can you get that's a highly touted offensive coordinator that's going to want to take this job? Like Eric Bieniemy, you think he would want to work with Kenny Pickett? This dude isn't that talented. What is one elite trait that Kenny Pickett has that would make anybody that has other options want to coach and call plays for the Steelers offense? He doesn't have elite mobility. He doesn't have a strong arm. He's not super athletic. He misses wide open wide receivers. Like, listen, you can put all the blame on Matt Canada all you want to for Kenny Pickett looking like a bust the last couple of years, but you can't blame Matt Canada for Kenny Pickett missing wide open wide receivers. You want to know something funny? Everybody was saying how Deontay Johnson and George Pickens were character problems and the Steelers need to get rid of them. And all of a sudden, Mason Rudolph comes in. He can actually get them the football. He can actually throw accurate passes to them when they're wide open. And all of a sudden, George Pickens and Deontay Johnson look like they are having fun playing football again. You see, people are making it seem like maybe they just don't fuck with Kenny Pickett. I don't think that's the case. According to a lot of people closer to the organization than me and most of you guys listening to this, a lot of players really like Kenny Pickett. But the problem is, if you're just not a good quarterback and you're a wide receiver, you're not going to really be a fan of the dude who can't get you the football. Especially if you're wide open, you're going to be a fan of the quarterback who can get you the football and can do it accurately and precisely. And that's what Mason Rudolph was able to do. Deontay Johnson went to bat for Mason Rudolph. Kenny Pickett, he just makes it harder to do your job as a wide receiver because you got to work extra harder because the dude isn't that accurate. And even when you are open, you don't know if he's even going to be able to get it to you. Like, I really believe that drafting Kenny Pickett was a huge mistake. And it may be an even bigger mistake than when they drafted Terrell Edmonds over Lamar Jackson a couple of years ago. You see, the problem with Mike Tomlin is that he's one of those head coaches that is really good, but he has been held back due to his quarterback situation. And when you're a defensive-minded coach, you have to get the quarterback position right because you don't specialize in that area. So if your quarterback situation isn't good, it makes it harder for you to have success. Look at Robert Saleh with the New York Jets right now. I think he's a decent coach. He's no Mike Tomlin, but for the New York Jets, if you had Aaron Rodgers this year, you probably are in the playoffs. You see, Kenny Pickett, if he was the backup to start this season and Mason Rudolph started the whole entire season, then the Steelers probably would have had a chance to win the AFC North, and possibly they could have had a wild card home playoff game. But because Kenny Pickett was so bad and he's overthrowing wide open wide receivers and whatnot, and Matt Canada got canned, you had to make some serious changes. Now you're giving Kenny Pickett the reins again. What's really going to change outside the dude calling plays? Like, yeah, the play calling can be better, and he showed some promise against Cincinnati, but he only led the offense to 16 points. I don't see anything special in Kenny Pickett. I really don't. This dude doesn't really have any juice. And I'm not hating on him, but you guys know I was never high on Kenny Pickett to begin with. I wanted Malik Willis. And yeah, Malik Willis is worse than Kenny Pickett. I understand that. But it's just like the Steelers should have never drafted him in the first place. They probably should have just went with Mr. Trubisky if that was the case and just try to be bad enough to get a quarterback next year. But that's the problem with Mike Tomlin. He's so good of a coach that you're never going to bottom out and be in position to draft a guy like a Caleb Williams or a Drake May who can legitimately be a franchise game changer for you. Instead, you got to opt to draft guys like a Kenny Pickett. Like, Kenny Pickett was never a first-round caliber quarterback. He was overdrafted. The Steelers just felt like they needed a quarterback. Big Ben just retired, and you got to find his replacement. You got to find somebody who can fill his shoes. And Kenny Pickett, you thought he could have been that guy, but he hasn't been. He played at Pitt, so he is the hometown kid. That definitely played a factor. But even watching him at Pitt, like, the dude had that big run in the ACC championship when he fake slid, but it wasn't really an explosive run. And you just knew that his mobility in college football wasn't really going to translate to much in the NFL. And I'm going to be honest with you. Any quarterback that's wearing 2 long sleeves like Kenny Pickett is, I can't take you seriously. Like, this dude wears 2 long sleeves at quarterback. It's like he's wearing a long-ass sweater. I knew he was going to be trash as soon as I saw him with 2 long sleeves and gloves on. Like, seriously, he looks like a receiver playing quarterback. And he just doesn't look natural playing QB out there. So, I'm just kind of over it now as a Steeler fan. Like, I'm not going to say fire Mike Tomlin anymore, because we obviously know that that's not going to happen. And I'm not going to keep complaining about the quarterback situation, because it just is what it is. I'm just hoping that we can hire the right offensive coordinator. And I'm hoping that Mike Tomlin is the dude in charge of that, because I just learned today, arguing with some Steeler fans on the Bleacher Report app, that the ownership is a little bit more controlling than what many people think. I didn't know that Mike Tomlin wasn't the dude who hired Matt Canada. It was the Rooneys who apparently hired Matt Canada, and they were the dudes who fired them, apparently. So that kind of concerns me a little bit. So maybe we've given a little bit of too much flack to Mike Tomlin for decisions that we thought were his, but actually weren't. So Kenny Pickett, maybe getting a new offensive coordinator like an Eric Bieniemy could change his career trajectory. But even with a good offensive coordinator, what's going to happen when the OC does a good job and he ends up getting a head coaching opportunity elsewhere? Then what happens then? Because you see, Kenny Pickett, his potential at best is that he's a average, maybe above average quarterback. Maybe he's a top 15 quarterback. At best, you get top 12 QB play out of Kenny Pickett. But for the majority of this dude's career, he's going to be nothing better than a top 17 and top 18 quarterback. And even if he does play at the top 12 level, is that ever going to be good enough to get the Steelers to another Super Bowl? When you got a division with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, and God forbid if Deshaun Watson can ever get it together in Cleveland, it's like you need to have a good quarterback to win. Look at the quarterbacks that go the furthest in the playoffs. They are the quarterbacks that are considered to be the most talented. Jalen Hurts last season, top 5 quarterback, top 3. Like Brock Purdy this season, MVP candidate. You know, he's going to be in the NFC Conference Championship game potentially. Hell, if they lose to the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love has been a top 5, top 10 quarterback this year. CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson. You need to have good quarterback play to win in today's NFL. This isn't the NFL of the 2010s or the 2000s or 1990s or 1980s when you can win with just anybody at quarterback and have great defense. For Kenny Pickett to be able to win the Super Bowl in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin's coaching has to be A1. He needs to have a Super Bowl caliber roster around him when it comes to every single position. Now, he has gotten better at taking care of the football, but that's about it. And he does have the ability to raise his game in big moments, but why does it matter if you can't play good for an entire 4 quarters? You can't play for an entire 60 minutes. You only play 15 minutes of a game? That's not how you win a Super Bowl. You got to play that thing good from opening kickoff to the final whistle. Listen, like, y'all may think I'm a Kenny Pickett hater. I'm not a hater. Like, I root for every Pittsburgh Steelers player that puts on that black and gold uniform every Sunday or whenever they play. But let's just be honest, man. The people that keep defending Kenny Pickett all their only excuse is that, well, he didn't get a chance to really play a lot of games with a new OC. Well, we could say the same thing about Matt Canada. Maybe Matt Canada wouldn't have gotten fired if Mason Rudolph was at quarterback instead of Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett could even hit George Pickens and Deontay Johnson when they were wide open on drag routes. Come on, man. I've seen plenty of passes that Kenny Pickett overthrow to George Pickens when he was wide open. Well, what about the drops? You want to blame him for the drops? Okay, cool. Yeah, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens had a lot of drops when Kenny Pickett was in that quarterback, but I ain't see the ball touching the grass too much when Mason Rudolph was in. I don't have a problem with Kenny Pickett being the starting quarterback next year for new OC. We did invest a first-round pick into this guy. You do want to get in, or you do want to get out what you put in for him. But I just don't see it with this guy, man. I never was a big fan of his coming out. When you're playing in a city like Pittsburgh, you need to be tough, which he has that, check, but you need a strong arm, which he doesn't have, and you got to have that it factor. And Kenny Pickett just doesn't have that it factor to me. You know, he's not a guy who's going to galvanize the team when the game is on the line, in a sense. He's not a guy who players are going to go to war for. They like him. They'll have a beer with him, but they're not going to run through a brick wall for him. I'm just not sold on Kenny Pickett. I really would like for the Steelers to move in a different direction, but obviously that's not going to happen. They're going to bring in a vet potentially. I doubt they draft a quarterback because where they're picking out in the draft, no good quarterback is going to be available. Maybe a Michael Penix, Bo Nix, or Spencer Rattler potentially, but Kenny Pickett, QB1 for the Steelers in 2024, man. Give me your thoughts about this down in the comment section down below. I'll tell you one thing. I'm not really a big fan of it. Big Mike McCarthy is going to be back in Dallas for 2024, people, despite having two really embarrassing playoff losses in back-to-back years. They got blown the hell out by the Green Bay Packers, man, and I don't give a damn what the final score said. You watched that game from start to finish, it was an ass whooping. And even then, the season before that, they lost in embarrassing fashion to the 49ers. And then even then, the first season, Mike McCarthy had a winning year in Dallas. Who did they lose to in the wild-card round? The 49ers. And you see everybody that is defending Mike McCarthy points out how he's won a division. He's won 12 games for 3 straight years. And that's cool. You feel me? Congratulations to Mike McCarthy for always being able to win 12 games. But this is the problem with Mike McCarthy and why Dallas was wrong to keep this dude around. The expectation for Mike McCarthy is not to win 12 games every year. The expectation every single season in Dallas is to compete for a Super Bowl. And that's something that they have not done since VHS and cassette tapes were out. The last time the Dallas Cowboys were in the Super Bowl, you were watching replays, not in HD, but on those box TVs that have the little yellow, red, and white cords that you have to plug in. You can't even watch the Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl in HD anymore. Unless you go and you watch, the new updated and revised versions of those things. But Mike McCarthy, I never thought this dude was ever going to be the guy to get Dallas over the hump. You really thought this dude would have been able to get Dallas to the Super Bowl when he couldn't even win another Super Bowl with Aaron freaking Rodgers? Bro, they went 15-1 one season and lost to the New York Giants. Are you kidding me? This dude couldn't win with one of the most talented quarterbacks in NFL history. And now we're all surprised that he can't win in the playoffs with the Dallas Cowboys when it matters the most. Who cares what he does in the regular season? Don't compare Mike McCarthy to John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin or anybody else. Yeah, you can make the same arguments that a guy like Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh should be fired. Cool, if they lose in the playoffs. But these dudes have had a little bit more playoff success than what Mike McCarthy has. And plus, in Mike Tomlin's defense, he hasn't had anywhere close to the level of talent that the Dallas Cowboys have had with the Steelers. Not making any excuses for him, but if you want to put Mike McCarthy on the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin on the Dallas Cowboys, I'm pretty confident the Dallas Cowboys go way further with Mike Tomlin than how far the Steelers will go with Mike McCarthy. He's not a bad coach. He's a pretty good coach, but there's a reason why the Dallas Cowboys have come up short year after year. I really thought that Jerry Jones was going to move on from this dude. After seeing how devastated and distraught he was during the game and what he said after the game, I was pretty confident he was going to move on. But I guess with his old age, he doesn't want to go on another head coaching search. But you're the Dallas Cowboys. You're the biggest brand in the National Football League. You got a great roster that's ready to win right now. It shouldn't be hard for you to get a guy like a Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel or even a Jim Harbaugh. But you see, Jerry Jones is so in control of things, and he always has his hand in the cookie jar, that I do believe that he likes hiring guys that can be yes men. And another thing that people keep throwing at you for why Mike McCarthy couldn't be fired was Dak Prescott had his best season under him. Dak Prescott's the reason why they lost. At the end of the day, like, Dak Prescott may not be a great playoff quarterback, but Dak Prescott has had some good playoff games in the past. If he could have good playoff games in the past, there's no reason why he shouldn't be capable of having them in the future. It really comes down to coaching and execution, and the Dallas Cowboys never look well coached anytime they get into the playoffs. Hell, they didn't even look that good against the best teams that they played against this season. Their best wins this season were against what? The Seattle Seahawks and the Philadelphia Eagles. You got your ass kicked by the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, what's going on? You lost to the Buffalo Bills in embarrassing fashion. Mike McCarthy is not really one of those coaches that is good enough to get you to a Super Bowl. He's one of those coaches that you hire to build up your team, and you can become a consistent playoff team with them, but you're never going to go anywhere further than maybe the wild card or divisional round at best. Like, I like Big Mike McCarthy. You feel me? And him and Dak Prescott have a pretty good relationship, but if you're Jerry Jones, you know that your time as being able to run this team at the level that you're able to run it is coming to an end. And if you're Jerry Jones, I'm pretty sure that he knows that he's not getting any younger. And you would think that he would want to try everything he can to win at least one more Super Bowl in this lifetime. And the fact that he's sticking with Mike McCarthy makes no sense to me. And you can defend this dude saying, well, John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, they don't get it done in the playoffs neither. But the difference between those coaches is that they're not coaching for the Dallas Cowboys. They don't have, like, the Dallas Cowboys easily were good enough to win the Super Bowl this year. The NFC isn't that great. Dak Prescott is good enough to win you a playoff game. You see, I don't think the problem has ever been Dak Prescott. Yeah, he does have to play better. I'm not excusing him for playing terribly. Even he said it. After the game, he played like shit. Probably one of the worst games he's ever played. But this dude has success in the past in the postseason. So if he's had postseason success in the past, why can't he have it now? I look at Mike McCarthy. Something about his scheme always gets exposed anytime they play a good team in the playoffs and anytime they play a good team in general. Like, they don't have a lot of impressive wins against good teams as of late. You beat up on Philadelphia. Once you beat up on Philadelphia, they pretty much collapsed. I mean, you beat who else after that? The Seattle Seahawks on Thursday night, who you were barely able to beat. And Dan Quinn, yeah, he's a pretty good defensive coordinator, but his defenses, where are they ever at in big games and big moments? You know, like, this defense didn't look that good this season. They looked way better last season than what they did this past season. And I get it. Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh haven't won in the playoffs for a while. But these are guys that they're not coaching for the Cowboys. Mike Tomlin has kind of overachieved the last couple of years in Pittsburgh. This was the first year that I truly believe that the Steelers actually lived up to expectations. They won 9-10 games. That was it. Regardless of the QB situation, you get Mike Tomlin and Dak Prescott, God knows how far he could take them. For the people that are defending the Cowboys keeping Mike McCarthy, the expectation is never to win the division or to have a winning record in the regular season. The expectation is a Super Bowl because that's the standard for America's team. And listen, I got no problem with them bringing back Mike McCarthy because I'm going to love laughing at you once again when you get upset in embarrassing fashion in the wild card round next year. I love watching the Dallas Cowboys fail. I really do, because their fan base is so obnoxious every single season. We can win the Super Bowl. We can win the Super Bowl. But at the same time, I also feel a little bit bad for the fan base because they do have the most passionate fan base in the NFL. Like, I don't think there's any fan base in the NFL that has the amount of passion and enthusiasm that Cowboy fans have every season, thinking they have a shot at winning the Super Bowl, knowing damn well that they're going to once again underachieve in the postseason when it comes around, but they still support their team mad crazy. And for that, you guys always have my respect for that. But Mike McCarthy is not it. He's not it. He's good enough to win you. He's good enough to win you the division a couple of times. He's good enough to have you at 10 plus wins every season. But what else comes after that? And we can have that conversation about John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, but we're having it about Mike McCarthy right now. These guys, like Mike Tomlin wasn't expected to beat Buffalo. At least they were able to keep it somewhat competitive at one point. The Dallas Cowboys were expected to beat the Green Bay Packers by at least 7.5 points. They were a touchdown favorite going into this game, and they just got pushed around. Where's the physicality on defense? Where was all of the big explosive plays on offense? This team has way too much talent to be underachieving the way that they did. And the same reason why they didn't win with Jason Garrett is the same reason why they aren't winning anything in the postseason with Mike McCarthy. Y'all seem to forget that Jason Garrett had a couple of really good seasons too. He wasn't just a master clapper when he was just clapping for nothing. There were years when Dallas looked like they could have won it all with Jason Garrett, and they underachieved in the postseason. So the same issue that you have with Jason Garrett is kind of the same issue that is reoccurring with Mike McCarthy. It's just that he's more consistent with it. You're not having those 8-8 seasons anymore. You're having seasons when you are getting into the playoffs, but you're getting bounced out and sent to Cancun as soon as you get there. And in life, you got to take risk. If Jerry Jones really wants to win, you would think that he would fire Mike McCarthy, go after Bill Belichick, go after Jim Harbaugh, go after Mike Vrabel, proven head coaches. Why are you holding on to a guy who couldn't even win with prime Aaron Rodgers? Mike McCarthy couldn't win with prime Aaron Rodgers in the postseason. Many people believe that Aaron Rodgers should have at least 2 more Super Bowl rings on his fingers. But he doesn't because of Mike McCarthy. And we're surprised that Dak Prescott doesn't play good in the playoffs when Aaron Rodgers couldn't even win another Super Bowl with Mike McCarthy being his head coach. Now, Aaron Rodgers didn't make anything easy on Mike McCarthy because of his personality, but you got to ask yourself, why did Mike McCarthy get fired from Green Bay in the first place? And why was he unable to win more Super Bowls with one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever touch a football? You know what they say? There are certain problems that keep revealing themselves about somebody. And when somebody shows you their true colors, you got to believe them. And Mike McCarthy has shown his true colors to the Dallas Cowboys for the last 3 years. And you know what this dude is. He's a good football coach that's going to get you to the playoffs every single season. And you're going to get bounced out either in the wild card or divisional round every single time you make it. And I was really close to coming on here and actually making a segment about how the Dallas Cowboys are actually legit Super Bowl contenders. I'm glad I ain't made that mistake. I'm so glad I didn't make that mistake because they almost had me fooled at one point. But one thing I know about the Dallas Cowboys, there are so many things that aren't guaranteed in life. But the things that are guaranteed in life, one of them definitely is you can count on the Dallas Cowboys doing what the Dallas Cowboys do best, underachieving in the postseason. Unbelievable. We potentially could have the 49ers and the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship. Isn't that crazy? But yeah, we're not going to get the Dallas Cowboys in there. Like, imagine if Dallas would have beaten Green Bay. Imagine that. They possibly would have been playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, they had a prime opportunity to get into the NFC Championship game this year. It's just, man, I don't know what Jerry Jones keep doing up there, man. I like Jerry Jones. I really do. And a lot of his players like him too. It's just, you just keep allowing mediocrity to transpire for the most recognizable brand in all the sports. It's just, you would think with this being called America's team, you would have the best of the best at everything. And you wouldn't just accept mediocrity. And I think it's even more embarrassing that the Dallas Cowboys have this name of America's team, but every time they get to the playoffs, bro, like, they just look awful. They just don't look prepared. Like, that loss to Green Bay, that ass whooping, I haven't heard from Dallas Cowboy fans ever since that game got started. I haven't. They were talking so much stuff. And like I said last week, that defense was overrated. And don't be surprised if they lose that game if Jordan Love balls out. And he did. He absolutely did. And you can't put it all on Mike McCarthy. Dak Prescott deserves the blame. But Dak Prescott has had some good postseason performances in the past. What has happened now? You got rid of Kellen Moore. Cool. Dak Prescott had his best season ever. But what did you have to show for it in the postseason? Nothing. It just seems like the Dallas Cowboys are just so fixated on being mediocre and just being okay with being okay. Mike McCarthy was a safe hire. It was never a hire that I looked at and was like, yeah, like this is going to change everything for the Dallas Cowboys. They're finally going to get to another Super Bowl again. We're finally going to be able to see the Dallas Cowboys playing in a Super Bowl that's not just in HD, but in 4K. By the time the Cowboys win another Super Bowl, we're going to have like 2000K. Hell, the resolution is going to be so incredible that it's just like you're right there in action. By the time we see the Cowboys win another Super Bowl, like, leave down in the comment section below your prediction for when the Dallas Cowboys are going to win another Super Bowl, or at least make it to another conference championship game, because my prediction is 2043. The Dallas Cowboys will make it to an NFC championship game when I turn 40-something years old. I'm 20 now, so I still got 2 more decades to go, but I don't see this team going anywhere with Big Mike at head coach. The New England Patriots are now going to be having a new head coach for the first time in forever, Jerod Mayo. Now, he spent a lot of years with this organization as a player. He spent 5 on the staff under Bill Belichick, and in his contract, it was a stipulation that said that he would be Bill Belichick's successor when the time was right. And a lot of people, when it comes to the New England Patriots fan base, are really excited about Jerod Mayo as the head coach. This is somebody who is a player's coach. The players like him. They gravitate towards him. They play hard for him. You know that the defense is going to be top-notch. And hopefully, in the areas that Bill Belichick has come up short in the last couple of years, Jerod Mayo can end up being better in those areas. And the Patriots can eventually get back to their championship-winning ways like they were back when they had Brady. Now, I'm not as confident as most people that Jerod Mayo is going to succeed in New England. I saw his press conference. I like what he said. He's well-spoken. Seems like a good leader of men. But there have been so many Bill Belichick disciples who we thought they were going to be the next best thing, and they fizzled out fairly fast. You see, he can connect with players on a different level that previous Bill Belichick disciples have been unable to do. But my question with him is that, is he finally going to be the first Bill Belichick disciple to finally be able to have success? I mean, the best coach that Bill Belichick has ever had on his staff was Brian Flores, and he got fired despite leading the Dolphins to 2 consecutive winning seasons. 9-8. Jerod Mayo, he is going to have to be able to get this quarterback situation right, which he stated in his press conference that they was definitely going to end up getting a great quarterback. Rather they trade up for Drake May or get Caleb Williams. I think they're going to be set if they get any one of those 2 guys at QB. Then you got to fix this offense. You got to get some playmakers at wide receiver. The offensive line may need a little bit more juice. The defense is fine. There isn't any major changes on the defense that have to be made. And the thing with Jerod Mayo that concerns me isn't just the fact that he's a Bill Belichick coaching tree disciple. I'm trying to find a different word to use other than disciple. But he also is going into an organization that right now, they're in a really odd spot. Because they are a team that has a really good offense, a really good defense, but their offense has been non-existent. And Jerod Mayo is a defensive-minded coach. So is Bill Belichick. And with the way the NFL is going right now, offensive-minded coaches are kind of taking over the league right now. And if you don't get the quarterback, if you don't get your coordinator situation right, it doesn't really matter who you hire call the plays for your QB if they don't do a good job of putting your young quarterback in situations to succeed. And another thing is that he only has 5 years of coaching experience. He isn't somebody that has been on Bill Belichick's staff for a decade and has tons of experience as a coordinator. Hell, he wasn't even a defensive coordinator. You look at Jerod Mayo, this was somebody who was able to quickly rise to the ranks after he retired, similar to DeMeco Ryans with the 49ers. And anytime you have a coach who rises through the ranks this fast, they're either going to be one or two things. They're going to be either really good or really bad. You saw what happened to Brandon Staley. He only was the DC of the LA Rams for one season. Got that head coaching job for the LA Chargers, and he looked in over his head. There's been plenty of promising assistant coaches that get the full-time head coaching gig, and they don't work out. So I'm really skeptical about Jerod Mayo as Bill Belichick's successor in New England. I really am. I don't really know how this thing is going to play out. I want him to succeed. I do like him. I think he can have some success, but I don't know if he's just going to be the next great New England Patriots head coach, especially when you have some really big shoes to fill. Bill Belichick, who, despite how you may feel about who is more responsible for all of the championships that the Patriots won in their glory days, Bill Belichick is still regarded as one of the greatest head coaches in the history of this game. All right? And Jerod Mayo, he only has 5 years of experience. And I definitely think that when you're coaching at a place like New England, experience is really big. Having an inexperienced coach learning on the job could be really tough when you look at how difficult this division potentially can be next year. And I'm pretty sure Robert Kraft knows that this is probably going to take a little bit of time to build up and get up off the ground again. But Jerod Mayo, he's a player's coach. The players like him. Maybe he can do what other failed Bill Belichick head coaches that have come from this coaching tree have been unable to do, and that's connect with players. Jerod Mayo does a really good job of that. He was a player himself, so he understands what players are expecting from their head coaches and the best way to get through to them. And those are the reasons why I think he can succeed, but I got more reasons for why I think he's not going to work out than I do him being able to win. So Jerod Mayo, will he succeed as the Patriots' new head coach? I really don't know. I really don't know. And I know that may not be a good answer for you guys, but I'm really on the fence about it. I really am, because I want to believe that he can do it. You only been on the coaching staff for 5 years. You would think that with you ranking up so fast and getting this opportunity so quickly relative to other people, that you should be a stud. You should be a prodigy if you could work your way up through the ranks that fast. But at the same time, Bill Belichick hasn't had a lot of coaches under his tree that have become successful. You don't have a lot of experience. That is a little bit of a concern. And you're a defensive-minded coach. Can you get the offensive coordinator hire right? And can you get quarterback right? Are the two biggest things that are going to define how successful Jerod Mayo is going to be with the Patriots. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Once again, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be posting a lot more content over the next couple of weeks. I kind of slowed down a little bit because I just started up my final semester of college. So y'all know how it goes when you get a new schedule, you get new professors, you got to fill it out a little bit. But I've been getting it done with all of my assignments way before they've been due. So I'm kind of ahead of things right now. I'm going to take tomorrow to finish up a couple of more assignments that are due in a couple of weeks, just so I can get them out the way so I can push out more content for you guys. Once again, love you guys. Appreciate you guys for supporting me. Before you get out of here, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Check out the podcast, available on all podcasting platforms. We are not just a podcast. We are not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, and Amazon. Make sure you go ahead, give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. Share the pod, and I will see you guys Sunday night with my reactions to the NFL divisional round.